In this lecture, we're going to take our block man and transform them into a block female. Okay, so here's where we got up to last time, and in order to model the female block person, a good starting point would be to bring in the reference images. So a quick challenge to you is to try and bring in those references and set them up with side and front view. Also put them into a new collection so you can easily hide it and make it unselectable. Pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, so hopefully you found that okay. So we take our download and we click and drag it in. However, before I do that, if within Blender I go to front view and drag it in this way, it will come in perpendicular to my camera, so it will already be the right way round. So let's go to the object data properties here, click on the opacity and bring it down so you can easily see it. And I'll scale it up just a touch, and in relation to the man, it's probably going to be around here, depending on the height you want the female, and G to grab in the x-axis to bring it along this way. I'll zoom in a fair bit and try and line up the x-axis. That looks pretty good. I think that will work nicely. Okay, let's go round to the side here, G then Y to move it backwards out of the way. Duplicate it with Shift D, RZ90 to rotate in the Z axis 90 degrees and press enter. Then let's go to side view and line it up this way. So G to grab in the Y, move it across. Now the feet aren't quite touching the floor, but the head seems to be lined up, so around there should work nicely. We can always put the feet a bit lower than the reference image and that should be fine. Back round to perspective view, G to grab in the x-axis and move it back, and we can model in front of it now. Lastly, let's put them into a collection, so select both of them, M to move to new collection, block female reference, and press OK. Let's just quickly find that, and there it is. Let's turn off its selectability and we're ready to start our modeling. Now we can create a new collection and start building a whole new female model out of different blocks again, and you might want to do that to practice what we've gone through. But often we're trying to make the process nice and quick, so we might as well copy what we have already and modify it. Now you can select all here and duplicate with Shift D and then move this all into a new collection, but it's actually much easier than that. If I press Alt A to deselect all, if I go up to my block man here and right click on this, I can duplicate the collection. So I can do that. There's block man 001 now, and I'll change this to block female. I can then hide the original block man. It looks like nothing's changed, but now we've got this block female there, and we have actually got a block man there as well. They're just a duplicate. So make sure the block man's hidden and block female is visible. So take a moment to catch up with me, duplicate your block man collection, and rename it as block female. So now it's a case of resizing it, and we'll have to modify the shapes very slightly in order to make it look more like a female. So one to go to front view. Let's go to X-ray mode so I can see through it easily and zoom in a touch. And the best thing to do is to probably select all my objects and just scale them down to start off with. However, if I press S to scale, they scale in to the middle. I'll undo that. That's because we've got median point. So everything selected, it finds the middle point and scales it inwards. But if I move my 3D cursor to here on the floor, and incidentally that is the world center just there, so we don't have to shift right click there. We can hold down Shift S and it brings up this pie menu, and you can move your mouse over to cursor to world origin and let go, and it will move it exactly in the middle there. So back to front view. So with that 3D cursor at the base there, I can then go up to the transform pivot points, and with the drop down choose the 3D cursor as the pivot point. Now when I scale, they'll scale downwards towards the 3D cursor, and that's exactly what we want. So now we can start modifying our objects so they match our female base. So take a moment to resize your female using the 3D cursor as the transform pivot point, so it's a similar size as the background reference. Pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, so we need to adapt the position of certain items. So the feet, for example, we can press G to grab and move those across, and they're out to the side here. This does have a sort of wider leg stance, but it's a good idea to follow the background image so we know we're getting the right proportions. It's not completely essential though. And of course when I moved one of my feet, the other one moved as well because it's mirroring around the trunk object in the middle here. So it's around this center point here. So when I move the other ones, they'll do the same thing. G to grab, R to rotate, and now I've got a slight issue. It's rotating around my 3D cursor. So I'll undo that. How can I make it rotate around its own origin? Have a quick think about that. Well, hopefully you remembered, we can come up to the transform pivots. We have actually got individual origins there, but we'll just go to the default, which is medium point, and rotate it that way to somewhere around there. And the medium point is only for this object. It's not including this one because that's a modifier and that's the mirror. So it's rotating around its origin just there. With the knees, we can just move those into position and rotate them very slightly, and the thighs as well. Just rotating those and bringing them out slightly to there. Now you'll probably want to go into edit mode as well. So we can click on our objects into edit mode and adjust them slightly. So I'll bring this up and scale them outwards. Probably somewhere around there. In our reference image, it's actually very cylindrical, but I think that's a better shape than our reference. Into object mode, select the thigh, and then into edit mode to do any edits, and we can press 1 to go to vertex mode, select these two. Do remember, of course, that I am in X-ray mode. So I'm selecting the back one as well, and tab back into object mode, and let's see what it looks like, and that follows it fairly well. Let's go to side view with 3 on my numpad, and adjust the shape here, back to X-ray mode. We can modify the thighs slightly by bringing these all in. Just make the legs thinner in shape. Into object mode, select the next one into edit mode, and start adapting our shape here as well. And we're just about there for the legs. Back out of X-ray mode just to see, and that's not too bad. Okay, so pause the video and take a moment to catch up with me by editing the legs. Okay, let's have a go at the arm. If I press 1 on my keyboard to go to front view, and I'll go back to X-ray mode. Now the arms are splayed out a bit more. This is known as an A pose, and it's quite good for rigging characters when you've got the arms out a bit further like this, because you tend to get problems if the arms are too close to the body and they can kind of get confused between which ones are attached to which bone. Don't worry if that sounds confusing, but just know that an A-frame, or a T-pose as it's known, with the arms right out to the side, is better for rigging your characters for animation. So let's move our arm out to the side here. Now I could come into here and select both objects for the hand and press G to grab and then rotate to move it into position, but I'll undo that because there's a quick way of doing it all at the same time. Take a moment to have a think what that might be. So if I select all of them, so I'll hold down Shift and box select these and the shoulder, and then move my 3D cursor by Shift right click to where the shoulder is, change my transform pivot point to 3D cursor, and then press R to rotate. And we can splay them out like that, and we can then scale them in, and they will scale in towards that pivot point. I'll go just a touch bigger because the shoulder needs to come in a tiny bit. So around there, then G to grab, move it in, and we've roughly got the right size there. Do remember to change your transform pivot back to medium point, which is a bit easier. Let's go to 3D view and take a look how we're getting on. Turn off X-ray, and we're certainly getting there. We do need a bit of work on the torso and trunk though. Okay, so a quick challenge to you is to work on the trunk so it matches our reference image. Pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, so I'll go to front view to start off with, into edit mode, select the top, G to grab and move it upwards, and a slightly wider hips for a female, coming down to here. Now if I zoom in just a touch, these are quite close to each other and they're slightly in danger of accidentally moving into the middle. If I do that, they get stuck because of that clipping, and they actually end up overlapping each other, which is a bit of a problem. So I'll undo that, and what would help is to press G then X and move them out into the middle so there's just a bit of space. Okay, let's go back to front view. That looks about right. Let's go to side view now. And females tend to have much more of a pelvic tilt, so it's tilted around this way more. So I can select all and rotate it, but it's probably easier to go into object mode and R to rotate and bring in that pelvic tilt like that. Then into edit mode with X-ray mode on. Let's just make some minor adjustments. X-ray mode back off, and let's quickly see what that looks like. There's a bit of overlap, so we probably need to go back into front view, into X-ray mode, and move these up a little bit. Just like that. Double check again. I think that looks a little bit better. So hopefully you came out with something similar. So I'll go into object mode, select the chest, and into edit mode. Let's go to front view with X-ray mode on, and we've got a fair bit of modifying to do. So in fact, let's go to object mode and just scale it down to start off with, to somewhere around there, and G to grab and move it upwards. And we've got a good position there. Let's go around to side view and see how we're doing there. Bit of rotation and up this way. This reference image has a very different position for the head, but we can sort that out in a moment. It may be tilted a little bit too far in the reference, so I think around about there is going to be better. Into edit mode and just make a few adjustments. These two here, for example, move them forward, and just simple minor adjustments, box selecting and moving. And to make a protrusion for the chest, we could either just bring this out like this, which works reasonably well, or we can create a new loop cut, Control R, new loop cut around there, and a protrusion out like this. I'll go to side view again, and we can bring this down just a touch, and I think that looks a bit better than my reference. So let's come back into 3D, see how we're doing, and turn X-ray off. It's getting there, but the arms and the head and neck are in the wrong position. So we should just be able to reposition the arm forwards and change the size and position of the head and neck in order to make this work. So pause the video and have a go at that. Okay, so I'll go back into object mode and select the arm there, Control box select to get rid of that, 3 to go to side view, G then Y, and move that forwards, select the head and neck, and just manually move those over to here, scale them down just a touch, probably around there. I can actually turn X-ray mode on and maybe move in just a touch here, and we can always select an object, go into edit mode, and perhaps scale these down just a touch. Out of edit mode, select the head, into edit mode for the head, and maybe just move the chin up a little bit. Once again, out of X-ray mode, and let's see how we're getting on. And I think that looks relatively good. Now with this particular model, there is a long distance between the torso and the chest, which you could fill in with an icosphere, or you could just make the chest a little bit longer, which I think is probably the easiest way. So into edit mode, select our chest, I'll frame that with period key on my numpad, into edit mode, and let's just extrude out this bottom face. So 3 to go to face mode, select that bottom face. I'll come around to side view for this, so I can see what I'm doing. E to extrude, and that always wants to go with the face directions, so the face normals like this. But if I press Z, I can move it manually, because it takes away that movement in the normals. I can press Z again to get the global Z axis if you want to move it directly downwards like this. So pressing Z a few times will either be the normals like this, once more will be completely manual like this, and then a third time will be using the global Z axis. So probably somewhere around here. Let's just have a quick look what that looks like. I could come down a bit lower, so G then Z, and that perhaps looks a little bit better. Back into object mode, let's hide our references, so I'll minimize the block female, hide my references, and see how we're looking. So that concludes this lecture. Make sure you've saved your work, ready for next time.